Familia, welcome back to the second season of NILC's Freedom to Thrive podcast. Resistance, justice, and resilience. Where we're going to have beautiful conversations with beautiful folks talking about how to survive, thrive, and fight back in these times. Because these are some wild times. And me, I'm your host and companion with these conversations. My name is Hector Flores, agitator, advocate, culture worker, and co-founder of Las Cafeteras, the cutest band out of East LA. But don't tell Los Lobos, they get jealous. So, familia, today we're talking about comedy as resistance. Comedy has been a form of resistance, and it's kind of been a saving grace. Like, comedy and humor has been wonderful to me in these times. So I'm so excited that our first guest for our inaugural show for season 2 is a writer, comedian, advocate, all around badass. And she's on the heels of a third Netflix special. We're going to have Cristela Alonzo join us in a little bit. So I'm so excited to bring her onto the show. But before that, like everybody knows, this is the National Immigration Law Center's podcast, Freedom to Thrive. So I want to bring on the jefa, la luchadora, la compañera, right here, president of NILC, Kica Matos. Kica, hola compañera. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Can I add la chingona there too?
Oh, girl, you know, I'm going to do it with an X. Little chingona with an X. Okay? Kica, I'm going to ask you a loaded question, okay?
Yeah, go for it. Oh, first of all, welcome as our host of the Webby award-winning podcast hosted by the one and only Hector Flores.
Compañera, it's good to have you. I have not seen you in a while because we've all been very busy. There's a saying, stars only shine in the dark. And in these dark times, it could be scary, and they are. But I also think about it like that's actually when we shine. That's actually when we get to see each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The folks out there doing the work, that's when you actually get to the stars. And I see you, compañera. I see your organization. I see the work that all of us and all the allies are doing. We can see each other in these times. So, for me, my question is, one, how are you? How are you doing right now?
I am filled with rage and energy and a sense of indignation. And I wake up every morning with fire in my belly, engaging in the fight. And so, as all things, and I also I am counting my blessings and my privilege every single day, and I'm channeling my blessings and my privilege to la lucha. Because if there ever was a moment when everybody needs to step up and fight, it's now. Our democracy is dying every day, and the only thing that's going to save us is we the people.
I remember, I think Muhammad Ali had the shortest speech ever at a commencement. He gets up on the podium and he says, "Me, we," and steps down. And that's kind of how I feel right now. Yeah. It's not about me, it's about we. Before we bring on Cristela, I want to ask you about your work as well, because I want folks to know about NILC and the wonderful work you're doing. Can you share a little bit about what NILC is doing right now to fight back in these times?
Yeah, if it was one thing that I would describe us as right now is an organization that is having the fight, and we will never bend at the knee. We are estamos en la lucha hasta que ganemos. And so we are using every tool that we can at our disposal, and we're one of those organizations that is doing everything we can to be effective. And so what does that mean specifically? And I'll give you a few examples, and then I'm going to stop talking because everybody's here to listen to Cristela, not to me. So since the January, we've been doing a ton of Know Your Rights materials. Why? Because we want to make sure that immigrant communities know what they need to do to protect themselves and to challenge this administration, because everybody in this country, whether or not you have status, has constitutional rights. And so our materials are in multiple languages. Go to our website and we have things like how to protect yourself if you're in a rally, If you have loved ones also who have been detained, how do you find them in this terrible maze where they make it really difficult for people to find their loved ones? Every piece of information you could possibly need at this moment, we have tried to turn into Know Your Rights materials, which means that what you're looking at should be in a language that you understand and should be really easy for you to absorb. We're not trying to sound like smart lawyers. We're trying to make sure that people have access to materials and they can absorb them. So we've done a ton of Know Your Rights materials. We're telling stories and we're capturing the footage of the atrocities that ICE is committing. Why? Because everybody looking at this footage should be ashamed. Right? And that's also a way that we can sue this administration and show the horrible, unconstitutional, violent things that ICE is doing. And America should be ashamed. I don't care what you look like or where you're from. And then we work, it's the National Immigration Law Center. So I'm a lawyer and I work with a bunch of lawyers. We have sued this administration on bunch of different occasions. So those 600 Guatemalan kids that this administration tried to kidnap and send away on a long weekend at 2:00 in the morning, we sued and we stopped that. And we got a judge to say, you're not going to deport these children now and in the future. The registry, this terrible thing that this administration tried to do to force immigrants to register, we sued there as well. And then we stood up. We are trying to protect the rights of immigrant children to be able to go to school. Why? Because in all of these different states now, there's an effort to repeal a Supreme Court law that allows undocumented children to go to public schools. And so we've stepped up to have that fight. We're part of the We Are Home campaign to support dreamers as well, right? People who have protection from deportation. And then the final thing I would say is we stood up an initiative called the Defending Democracy Initiative that has us really at the intersection of protecting immigrants and protecting our democracy. And so you're going to see us filing a bunch of different lawsuits in the coming weeks. And all of those are at the intersection of making sure that we continue to wrap our arms around immigrants and we sue the hell out of this administration. And at the same time, we support a democracy that is dying slowly, but dying every single day. So that's what we've been up to.
And compañera, I'm so happy that people like you are in the fight, and they're suing the hell out of these folks. Thank you. That's all I got to say right now,
Thank you.
compañera.
Let me say, Hector, thank you for feeding the soul of the movement with your beautiful music. And Cristela, thank you for making us laugh.
And I think that's a great way to bring in our compañera right now. So from the valley of the Rio Grande, where breakfast tacos run like water, you know what I mean? I want to bring on a wonderful, wonderful ally, advocate, comedian, writer. Can I have a big round of applause, everybody, for my home girl from Texas, Cristela Alonzo, everybody.
What's
Hey.
up? Oh my God. I mean, I'm going to clap for myself también porque why not?
You know what I mean? Hey, that's where I think this is where a DJ works. You know what I mean? Where, hey, DJ, bam, 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 bam. But Grisela, it's so good to have you out here, compañera. You have been wild. You've been on the press tour. You just released your third comedy special on Netflix. I saw you on the Howard Stern show. I saw you on the Daily Show. I'm like, dude, compañera, get it. Get it. Because the world needs to know your name and the work you're doing. You know what I mean? But before getting here, I don't know if everybody knows a little bit about your background. So
Yeah.
one is you grew up in the valley, you grew up on the border.
Yes.
And one thing I want you to share is like what for you, what do people not understand about what is the difference about growing up on the border? What's something people don't understand? And then
Yeah.
how did that shape you, just sort of your approach to life and comedy growing up in El Valle?
I'm going to be real honest. You know what I learned about growing up in the border is that in the border, I was allowed to have a personality and be an individual. And by that, I mean that everybody that I grew up with, we were all Mexican, because we were in a border town. I didn't, in school, we had like one white student at school, you know what I mean? And we all knew her, right? And it was predominantly Mexican. And I say that I was allowed to have a personality because there you realize that we were all people. It wasn't until I moved from my border town that I realized that people love to
Mm.
label you and tell you, oh, you're a Mexican, you're a minority, you're a this. And I had never heard the term minority until I left my hometown, because there I was just Cristela. But when I moved away, I was the Mexican. I was the Latina because I was the rare one. So growing up in the border town taught me a couple things. It was the fact that I was allowed in my hometown to like sci-fi, to like comic books, to like all the nerdy stuff. And then when I left, I realized that I was going to be a representative of my culture to everybody. And the people that weren't familiar with my culture, they thought that if I liked something, everyone in my culture liked that thing, you know? And so for me, growing up in the border town, I realized that when you grow up in a border town like mine, we didn't judge people crossing the border. It was a way of life. You know, there's kids that live in Mexico that come to school to the United States and then go back home at the end
It's
of the
normal.
day. You
It's
know,
normal.
it's a commute. You know, and we never said, well, what are they doing? And blah, 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 because we all knew that we had to work together. You know, it's like the way that the country that exists, we have made ourselves dependent on immigrants to work in this country to contribute to the economy. And for me, it was just this really weird thing that when I left, I realized, oh, everybody doesn't get that in harmony, we all actually get what we want, you know? And that's what was really weird, especially when I moved to Hollywood. Even when estaba peor, it was worse when I got to Hollywood, because I was a stand-up comic. I started out in Dallas, and in Dallas, I was just a comic. I was one of the only women doing it. I was one of the only Latinos doing it. And then when I moved to LA, I wanted to do club sets, and the managers at some of the clubs back then were like, well, you're Latina, you got to go do the Latino shows.
Mm.
You can't perform at the clubs. Like, you got to go do the Latino shows. And I'm like, well, where are these Latino shows? I've never even heard of these Latino shows. They're like, bars, restaurants, you got to go do that. And I had to go do that. And I was just like, man, the way that someone that was born in the United States gets treated because of what they look like, you know, you're like, oh, damn, that makes a difference. It's important to actually, like, that's one of the reasons I became so active and vocal, because I'm like, wait, you can't make me an experiment for everybody. You can't make me do something. That's what I've learned in my entire life from going from a border town to Los Angeles.
Dude, you just blew my mind right now. You literally, and you know it's so crazy because my dad's from a border town.
Yeah.
So my dad's from San Luis, Rio Colorado.
Oh, okay.
So right under, so it's Yuma, Arizona, the border,
Yeah.
San Luis.
Yeah.
And so that little town is where my dad's from. And my dad would be like, oh, the border? Yeah, literally a line in the dirt. Like we would cross every day. No, we go to work, no issue. Right? Like the way he talked about it was just this like, yeah, I was there. Nobody really cared about it. And it would go back and forth, right? So he never saw himself as different. And it's so dope the way you describe that. Like, yeah, when everybody see themselves as the same, you're not there trying to identify who's less than.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or better than or superior in that sense.
What's even funnier to me, what's interesting is that, like, when I was growing up, you didn't even need a passport to go to Mexico. So it was that thing.
Yeah.
It was so understood that it was such a way of life. You needed a like show birth certificate and stuff, but then the passport thing didn't really come into play till I became like a preteen teenager, and then everything changed. But before that, when I was a kid, all they would do is that they would ask you, like, are you an American citizen? If you were a kid that didn't have an ID, they would ask you, what's your favorite subject at school, just to get you interested, right? What's the name of your school? Because they want to know that you're not really like that you're not taking somebody's identity, right? So it's like you have to get quizzed. What's your favorite teacher's name? What does your teacher look like? They had all of these questions that as a kid, you're like, why are they asking me all these questions, right? But it was because there was no need for passports back then, that they were just like, okay, come on in. You know, it's like, you say that you're this is what it is. And then all of a sudden, when the passports were needed, everybody became this very pious group that's like, immigrants. No, it just became this heightened thing, and which I always thought was so ridiculous, because growing up in the border town, we didn't have that growing up.
Yeah. You know, so crazy. So when in fourth grade, I went to a new school, and I remember I was speaking Spanish, and my friend tells me, hey, stop speaking Spanish. If you speak Spanish, you're gonna go with all the dumb kids. And he pointed to this bungalow, and I was just like, yo, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And literally, Cristela, from that day on, stopped speaking Spanish. Like I didn't want to speak Spanish no more. I didn't like I was just ashamed. And what I later found out, that was the ESL. That was the ESL classroom, right? And that's the way it was viewed. That's the way it was talked about. And you have a young kid like me, and there's like thousands of kids like me who grew up ashamed to speak the language or have their food. But you saying like, oh, when you grow up in a border town, everybody's the same, and there's no like differentiation. Like you were allowed to like enjoy a variety of different things. And I think that's so dope and that's fascinating, right? I saw an interview with, I don't know if you know the rapper Killer Mike.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know Killer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw an interview with Killer Mike, and he's talked about going when he in school. He went to like he went to like all black, elementary school, and like they were named after black leaders, and in elementary school and middle school. So by the time he went to high school, right, he felt he was already like a proud black man,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
he felt proud of his culture, his people, his history. So when he interacted with others, right, that came with a different perspective, he was like, he was schooled enough to check it, educate folks, bring people into the conversations. Like that would have never happened if my community around me didn't support my history, education, and my elevation of myself as a young black man. And I always think that's so fascinating,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what happens to a lot of us. Is like we speak Spanish, and it's like, oh no, that's a second class language.
Yes.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yes, and and look, thinking about it too, it's like where I grew up. It's like we also. I had my friend in college. My best friend in college was this black guy named Byron. Rest in peace. And he's the one
Mm,
that actually taught me about culture, because the same thing, growing up in the border town, we were all the same. We had a love and respect for the culture, but we didn't know a lot. We never really thought about the culture as a whole, meaning that like in school we were taught American history, which really predominantly meant old white men,
white history.
right? So it was like no one else contributed anything to anyone, whatever. It was just, the pilgrims came, and thank God they came. They helped the natives, right? Grow the corn and everything. It's like everything in history is just like, man, it really is. It's Avatar, right? White savior,
Mm,
right? Coming in and everything. So when I was in college, my friend who was black asked me about my culture, and it was the first time that I realized that the way that I was raised with the culture, it was the culture that I knew was all Mexican because my mom was from Mexico. But I didn't have a sense of Latinos in American history,
mm,
in American society. And that's something that I had to learn. And it's funny because growing up, one of my favorite shows, I used to love watching A Different World, right?
mm.
It was after the Cosby Show. It was a spin off of the Cosby Show with Lisa Bonet, but it was an HBCU. It was a black college where you saw the students be so in love with being at that school, and they celebrated everything. And I was like, what is that? What is
Yeah,
that vibe? Because
yeah.
it was something that seemed so foreign to me, because they were able to actually learn about their ancestors who came before them. And going back to what you were saying, we live in a place where a lot of people see that the language that you speak isn't good enough to be spoken. So there is something that we constantly fight where it's an uphill battle, right? We're going uphill trying to find our place in this country, which we shouldn't be. We should be
Yeah.
allowed to create whatever we should be able to carve out everything that we want in this country and make ourselves what we want to be. But we constantly have to be told by certain people that your language isn't good enough, your country of origin is the problem. It's like people think that Mexicans and Guatemalans are the same thing. People think it's a lot of defending yourself, and when you
Yeah.
defend yourself, how can you thrive?
And here's the thing: when it's done well, when systematic racism is done so well, they don't even have to do it anymore. We do it to ourselves.
100%.
100%, right? Like, so like a young person like me no longer wants to speak Spanish. My name is Hector. I want to change my name. I don't want to be called Hector anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to listen to Spanish music. I only want to listen to, and my community around, I also judge other people,
Yes.
right? Then I started doing to them, right? What I feel is being done to me. And, here's the thing too. Yeah, here's what I always tell people, with the whole Bad Bunny thing, Bad Bunny at the
Yes.
Super Bowl. It's kind of wild because everybody's like, we want an American, and it's like, all right, know your history. And then two, they're like, we want an American language like English. I'm like, bro, look, yes, I'll give you this. Spanish is from Spain. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wait till they find out where English is from.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I keep saying the thing about the Bad Bunny thing. I keep saying, are the critics racist or stupid? If you got to pick one, what are you? Racist or stupid? Racist that you don't want someone that his skin color performing at the Super Bowl, or is it stupid that you don't know that Puerto Rico is part of the United States? Pick one, because it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. And these are wild times, Cristela.
They are super wild times, but that's the thing. They bank on the first thing they do is trying to strip any kind of education from you. Yeah. And that is why, with Kica was saying like the know your rights, right? That's step one. Knowing information is the most powerful tool that we can have. And by that, I mean, and even now, after, now that LA, Chicago, and now Portland are being under siege with like ICE, what I have seen is an evolution. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about this because LA, the ICE raids, we were guinea pigs for the ICE raids, right? We didn't know what was happening. We were the guinea pigs. And you had the propaganda where like the media shows like the pictures of the Latinos with like looking angry with the Mexican flag and like this is what's happening in LA, and you're just like and remember, I know we saw each other at the SEIU rally. It was like you remember the rally, like you go down there thinking, man, downtown, I hope I'm safe, right? And I tell it,
and it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. But I tell people, those rallies, like the rallies that we went to, that we go to, you need permits to have them. This is how organized these rallies are. You need permits to set up the lights that they had and everything. But on TV, they make it seem like people just show up angry and stuff. No, it's not that. After LA, you have Chicago. And now Chicago, you start seeing a little people being really salty in a good way, where you're just like, yes, knowing your rights. I actually will say that now we're at a point where the immigrants have to know their rights, but also the citizens trying to protect the immigrants, meaning that we need to have know your rights for the immigrants and know your rights as a citizen. Can you record? What are you doing? What can you ask? Because ICE is trying to say, no, you can't do this. Like the people that didn't want to wear masks during COVID now are all like ninjas, right? Like, it's just like pick a side, right? Don't be no standing hipócritas, right? But now with LA and Chicago, now we see Portland, now we see a Latino guy in an inflatable frog suit.
Amazing.
And that is
amazing.
The evolution that happens once people know what we're up against. And notice that once they realize what they're up against, they choose comedy and they choose to be trivial. They choose to mock and trivialize the movement because comedy is a way that you show people how ridiculous the circumstances are. And that is why it's important to lean into the joy and comedy of it, because they want you sad. They want you to cry, because crying, sad, yelling, anger, that makes a great propaganda tool for that side.
That's another. I want to put that on a t-shirt. I want to put that on a damn t-shirt. Okay, we'll go 50-50, 60-40. So hey, I mean, I saw this incredible, little soundbite the other day. It was Jon Stewart at the Kennedy Center, where he talked about, you know, in a fascist government, they're going to come after the writers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to come out the educated, and they're coming after the comedians,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not just the activists. Why are they coming out after comedians?
Because
Like,
all of those people, especially the comedians, they actually, it's something that I like to do in my stand-up, is that, you can talk about serious things, but you do it in a funny way so that people don't know that they're being talked to. That's one thing and I learned that years ago when I started doing events like for campaigns, movements, propositions, whatever it was. It was this thing where I went to these events and I realized that the politicians were boring people to death. Nobody wants to hear statistics. Nobody wants to hear, nobody wants a PowerPoint presentation on anything. It's one of the reasons why, in junior high, before the internet existed, I had a side hustle. And this is I'm 46, right? So we had no internet. I used to have a side hustle of writing down the lyrics to hard songs, and I would sell copies of the lyrics to people because everybody wanted to know the lyrics to these songs, right? So
give me an example. Give me an example.
Those Informer was one of my biggest money makers. I would record the music videos on my VCR, and I would just sit there and stop, and I'm like, Informer, see daddy me snow me onto I'm writing it, right? And I would sell each copy for $5 and the students would buy it, and why do I say this? Because what people want are to be entertained. These kids were using their allowance money to have me give them lyrics to songs because they knew that the things that make them feel better is a priority. And that is something that through music, look, during the first term of Donald Trump, the album that got me through was A Tribe Called Quest. Thank you for your service. We got it from here. That was an album of resistance. That was something, they make fun of him. They call him out. It's something that made you feel like you weren't alone. And that's what comedians do. And that's what musicians do. That's what the artists do, because you're not trying to do it when you're trying to do something, when you're trying to make art. And I struggle to call myself an artist, or what I do is art, because I am very hard on myself. And I love art so much that I hold it on such a high regard that, it's for me to call something art, it's next level for me. I can't describe it, but it is this thing. When you're making good art, it should be about what you're feeling, your existence, your plight, your emotion, who you are at that moment. You're not trying to create something thinking, I think millions of people will like this. The truth is that good work will always be found by your tribe. Whoever those people are, they will come seeking you. You don't go seeking them. And the ones that find you, they get it and they're in it. And sometimes they just want they want something that shows them that they're not alone. Yeah. And if you can make people feel good by doing that, that's really important.
Yeah.
Because
it's so.
Go ahead.
I'm also just really inspired by just comedians, the art of laughter, the art of comedy, right? The precision of timing. And this is also in the music world as a musician too, right? Like you develop a set list, right? You read the room, you read the space and how people want. But like I love, because I get when I hear racist shit, like I go from 0 to 100, right? Like and I get so mad. But comedians take that and like they'll turn it into a joke,
Yes.
right away, and you call that wit, right?
Yeah.
You're like someone who's witty,
Yeah.
right? They're not that we're not led by our emotions
Hmm.
and therefore led in that way, but actually, oh,
Yeah.
this is fuel for another perspective, so so then I started doing some stuff in between shows. I would be like, I'd finish a song that's for immigrant rights. I go, you know what, I know why ICE is out here, because it's illegal to look this good. You know what I mean? So I throw in a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that word, they take that word and they make it so scary.
Yes.
And so I'm like, how do I take this scary word and make it something funny, right? And that's something that I learned from comedians, right? That I learned from you,
Yeah.
and now, so I want, for me, I want to transition to like, you are now on your third
Hmm.
comedy special. You just dropped it on Netflix,
Hmm.
Upper Classy.
Yeah.
Um, and one is like, I didn't expect, I expected to laugh and I did not expect to have so many emotions.
Hmm.
And you got me. You got me through your vulnerability, through your rawness, through insecurity, and through showing people your life, right? You made me feel not alone. Like that's what you did, you know? And I got so emotional, man. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then the next day I saw my mom. She's like, Miko, I need you to see something. There's this girl on Netflix. I'm like, what's her name? I don't even know, but she's so fun. You would like her. You would like her, Miko. She's like, you would be friend. I go, you saw the whole thing? She's like, I saw it, Miko. And I was like, yeah, man, you're like reaching, you're like, it's so intergenerational and like, it's so dope. How you feeling? How you feeling about this trilogy now, right? From lower classy, middle classy, and now you're third. How is this trilogy feeling?
For me, I want people, to know that the trilogy started 10 years ago because when I had my TV show, I had a sitcom that ran for a year. It was 22 episodes, and one of the number one notes that I would get from studios and networks is we need more ascension. They need to ascend, right? And they
Mm,
give you that, but they don't explain what they mean by that, right? So it's basically like, we set the word, now you take it however you mean, right? And the way that I understood it was that even from the moment I pitched the show, I would get notes that they thought my family was too poor. They wanted my family to have more money. And my point was that you needed to show the journey from nothing to something to make people feel like they could do it too,
mm.
and to understand that part of the part of coming up is the success. It's not just success at the top, it's the movement of it.
The journey.
And I would get
Yeah.
so frustrated because of this ascension note that I would get, that I started thinking, if I did a trilogy of specials that showed my ascension from beginning to end, not knowing where it would be, I think it would be interesting to show people where I would be at certain points, to show how I've evolved throughout the years, hoping that it would work. And the first one was an introduction about who I was for people that didn't know, and really talking about how I grew up with an immigrant mother, and really talking about, like, the last joke of the special is about my mom, how she was on her deathbed, and we realized that we didn't talk in my family, we don't talk about feelings, right? It's like, we can tell each other that we love each other and stuff, but we don't have those moments where we tell each other how much we mean to each other, right? And
Yeah.
my mom was on her deathbed, and I'm like, this is my chance, I'm gonna do it. And I do all of this and I tell her everything. And then she didn't die. And then she lived for another year and she just made fun of me for telling her how much I loved her, right? And like she would just use it against me, right? And she's like, I want a burger. It's like, you can't have a burger. And she's like, well, I thought you loved me. And I mean, like, right? True story, came from a very sad moment in my life, right? But you tell this story. It took me 16 years for me to be able to write that, to tell that story. You know, like maybe 16 years, let's say, I don't know, 13. So, you know, it's like this thing where it comes in truth. I talk about my mother, hoping that other people might understand that if they have that mother that is like that, or that family that doesn't talk about it, you know, maybe you should talk about it, right? But the first special was about me coming up and me trying to figure out life. The second special was about me having more money. And there's this weird idea that if you have money, you're just buying expensive stuff all the time. But what people don't understand, that if you grew up in the poverty, below the poverty line like I did, when you come into money, you are playing catch up from all of your life. So now I have this money and now I have to go to the doctor and find out that I'm diabetic because I didn't have money to go to the doctor. So, you know, and that's one of the things that kills our community. Not having access, not having money. We're just like, oh, well, you know, we just have a bad knee. We just have a bad something, and you deal with it. And you're like, no. That's not how it works, you know? So like the second one was about getting my idea of money, you know, and being able to take care of myself, and how taking care of yourself is considered a luxury. It's bullshit that it's considered a luxury. And the third one.
Well, hold on. Before you go to the third one, I just want to say, so as a musician, as an artist, you don't get health care.
Yeah.
You don't have a 9 to 5. You don't have 401k. So I go to a dentist in Tijuana. So because
yes,
I had a root canal and it was like almost $4,000. I went to Tijuana and they're like, yeah, we'll do it for like $700.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember your joke in the in your second special. You say, you want to know how much money I make? So I make new teeth money.
Yeah. The teeth are so expensive that when I die, I'm gonna be in the coffin like that, smiling so people can see it.
Dude, when you said that joke, I was like, to everybody who don't have money to go to the dentist, you know, say who my dad never went to the dentist.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And like that joke was so dope,
Yeah.
right? Like it just kind of rippled effects. And like it's almost, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you know, you know. And if
it's not for every like for me, it's like I'm not trying to do the jokes about like what's up with airline food. You know, it's like I know so many people that have never been on a plane.
Yeah.
Those are the people I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, do I worry about being mainstream? No. Who cares about that? Like, you don't worry about trying to placate to everyone. Again, you have to be specific. To me, I think that being specific actually makes you universal. The more specific you are, the more you connect with people.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, you know, I did a joke that I cut in the special, in the third one. And it was about, and let me talk about the third one really quick.
Yes,
Third one,
yes.
right? I realized that I had this, now it's upper classy. Now I'm like, you know, it's like, now I've had money for a couple more years. And what does that mean? And to me, I realized that it was knowing that you're not about survival anymore. What does it mean when you don't feel like you have to survive? Like you're no longer in survival mode. And that's when I realized, and you know, I learned this from my therapist. It's we do not think of rest as something that's important to us. We think that we have to constantly work hard and always work because of the survival mode. We think that we always have to work. But then you have those occasions where you get really sick and you keep trying to work through that sickness and your body finally gives out and says, bitch, you're sick. Right. And you're done. Right. And I remember this one time I had a really bad flu and I was home and I was trying to clean. Right. Because I'm home. I couldn't go out anywhere. I'm like, but I'm home, so I'm going to clean. My therapist was like, but you're sick. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm home, and she was like, your body is telling you that you have to rest. And that seemed like such a luxury to me that I was like, oh my God, right? Like the rest of it is so weird. But the third one, in the past 10 years, I have shot these specials with Trump as the backdrop, right? The first special I shot in August 2016. After the first taping, I shot 2 specials. They were like, I got notes saying, do you want to get rid of the Trump jokes that you did? Because he's not going to win. And I was like, no, it's important to keep him because it's a snapshot of where we are in this country. You cannot erase what is happening. It happened, and second one, I was going to record around my birthday. My birthday's January 6th. It was that year.
Like that.
Damn. Dude, my birthday's January 6th. I was going to record it on my birthday, right? So I had to wait. I moved it to a month in February because of January 6th. And the third one I shot on June 14th, which is No King's Day. It was the day that he threw himself that Chuck E. Cheese military parade, right? And you're just like, dude, this guy, right? My friend Paige, who directed the special, she's she's one of my dearest friends, and she's very political. She has a fantastic documentary called Outstanding, and it covers comics, LGBTQIA members of stand-up comedy and the evolution of the community and comedy. And we were talking about it, and she's like, well, you're doing that on No King's Day, so you have to say something. And I was like, yeah, because if I don't, who is? Because you can't assume that others are going to do your job for you. If you want to say something, you say something. You can't wait for somebody else to do it, right? So I was like, I got to do it. I don't think that I'm doing it because I think that I'm like, I'm the voice of people. I'm like, no, I'm saying something because I want to say it, right? And I had this idea of taking out the Sarape flag, at the end of the special. And I Googled
which my mom loved, by the way. Like she's like, Mijo, you got it. She's like, go all the way to the end. Okay? She takes out this flag.
It was like I Googled Sarape flag and I found a bunch of them, but they were all like corporate businesses that were just mass producing everything, whatever, or it was foreign made or whatever. And I found the shop Sin Titulo and from Chicago, Latina owned, and I found this flag and they were saying that their mom sews it. And I was like, Latina mother,
say less.
Like I'm like, give me 9.
I'll take all of them.
Yeah, but I hit them up on Instagram and I'm like, hey, I gotta I'm gonna take pictures with this flag. I didn't tell them that I was gonna use it in the special in case it got edited out, because you never know. You know what I mean? So I was like, can you overnight this for me? Whatever, and yeah, they sent it to my brothers in McAllen. And they brought it up to Dallas where I shot it. And I took it out and I was like, here's my thing. I knew that the special would be a turnoff to a lot of people. But here's the thing, though, is that I'm used to it. Being a Latina, I have been used to my entire life being disregarded by people for what I am. And being disregarded feels really bad. But unfortunately, you get used to it. And when I realized that there were going to be some people that would never give me my special the time of day. There's a moment when you realize, like, fuck it, let's say all of it. Why not? It's not for them, it's for them. And I would rather talk to them than, again, it's like on Instagram, it's on social media, right? When I say something and somebody's like, stick to like, why are you talking about politics? You're a comedian, right?
I know.
And I always tell them, anyone is allowed to talk about politics. During campaigns, when they want our votes, they want everyone's vote. Everyone has to write about, everyone has the right to have an opinion about politics. People that cannot vote, that are here undocumented, they have a right to be critical of politics because they're part of the country. People in other countries, they have the right to be political because this country affects other countries. So don't tell me that politicians are the only ones that can talk about politics. This is our country. And that's something that we forget, right? It's kind of like in Hollywood. There's people that don't want to anger their agents, don't want to anger their managers. I'm like, they work for you. These people work for you. You don't work for them. We elected them. They work for us. So it's one thing that I'm like, when people say you should stick to telling jokes, I'm like, well, it's like, then unfollow me. You think I care? Like,
girl, I see you on Instagram.
Who are you to tell somebody what they can and can't talk about? Like,
I'd be like, haven't you seen lower classy?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Did you not see middle classy? Do you not follow her on Instagram? Like, bro, what are you talking about?
It's like, you picked the wrong time to like fucking get angry.
What are you talking about? Yes.
But it is, no, but it is, it's one of those things where, like, we live in a time where, I don't know, like, and I don't want to generalize, but I'm going to generalize.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the community, it's almost like they need to hear people talk to be given permission to be active. Because a lot of the community, a lot of the families come with, don't speak unless you're spoken to, always behave, da 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 da. And it's like, and if you don't get told that you have permission to fight and be active, some people don't know that they have that power. Years ago, I was in a minivan with Dolores Huerta, right? And we do voter outreach. We're in like Florida, and we're driving around like middle of the night. We're going from a farm to another farm, talking to migrant farm workers, their families, trying to get people interested in campaigns and whatever. And I asked Dolores, like, what do you think is one of the best lessons that you've learned? One of the best things you've learned in all of the work that you've done? And she says, one of the best feelings I have is when I see people come into their power. When you actually get told, hey, you're powerful and you can make a change. And you see them go off and do that. And you realize that they needed to be told that they had power. That is one of the best lessons I've learned.
What I want to know from you is, doing those five fundraisers, how was that for you? What was your takeaway from that? And what was the organization you did it with?
So, it was the Immigrant Defenders Law Center, and I didn't know what to do. And I actually threw it out on an Instagram live or something like that. It was actually, no, I was really upset, and I made a post and I put it on my stories. And I just said, what if I just put some shows together, blah, 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 blah. And I had some dear friends that were like, you should do a higher ticket fundraiser, because you know people that have money and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, because those people, there's like people that will buy the tickets, but they don't have the same impact as if you actually go to the community and you charge $30 a ticket. And to me, I actually we raised $49,000 from like the shows. All, it was all free. I had a couple other comics on the shows and I paid them out of my pocket because I wanted them to have something. But, it was like the tickets were $30 and all of the money went to the organization. But I actually was doing it as an experiment to empower people to try to teach them about voting. So it was this thing where the constant complaint is, well, I'm just one person. What does one vote do? Right? Well, let me show you that in these shows, your $30 combined with other people's money collectively came up with a lump sum of money that we gave away to people. That is the power of voting. That is the power of all of this. So, it's I did it though because the vibe of the shows, the worst thing is happening in our backdrop, and the shows were full of joy.
Yeah.
And the people felt that it was okay to feel joy in that time.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to remember, that in this time, if you're tired, step away, because we cannot have exhausted people. Exhaustion does not give us good results. You go, you refuel, you recharge, step away from the news. The news will always be there. If you need that break, you go and rest, because that's how important you are to the fight. We need you rested. We need you to not be so down on yourself. You need to feel like there's hope, because there's hope. The moment you feel like there's no chance, the moment you feel hopelessness, step away and recharge, because we need you well. Like I said at the beginning, the biggest form of resistance is laughing and smiling, because when people hate you, people don't like you, that is one thing they don't want to see. They don't want to see you happy. The best revenge is being happy despite everything, because in the end, good will win. It might take a while, but like you said before at the top of the podcast, Hector, we've been here before. There are a lot of us that have been here before. A lot of people, a lot of young people, this is new to them. But a lot of people have been around it for decades, and we're not going anywhere. We haven't gone anywhere. And in fact, pretty soon, in a couple of years, we're going to be the big majority in this country. So whether you like it or not, we coming.
Compañera, before, like everything, things must come to an end. I know we could talk for another 2 hours.
Yes.
I mean, for real. And then I would enjoy every minute of it. But I want you to tell folks what's coming up, where can they find you?
Yeah.
Ándale.
You can find me on social media. I'm really active on Instagram is just like my Achilles heel. I don't know why, but I'm at CristelaAlonzo.com. I'm already putting some dates together for 2026. I'll start going on the road in January. I'll announce the tickets next month going on sale. As of now, I think I'm hitting minimum 20 cities from like January to April, and I'm not done. And this is the time to check out my special, upper classy, middle classy, lower classy, before I come out with the next hour next year. And I hope to see you there. And when you come to the show, I want you to have a good time, because that is how we beat everyone.
That's right. Yo, congratulations, compañera, on all your success. There's a saying that Filipinos say, they would say out there when they organize with Mexicanos and the farm workers, they would say, isang baksak, right? And in Tagalog, that means one rise, one fall. You come for one, you come for all. Because when one of us comes up, that's good for everybody. When we see you rise, compañera, and we see you succeed, and you are an artist, one of the best to do it. And I thank you. And I'm so appreciative of you and your work and just knowing you in this time. Gracias, compañera. Much love.
Gracias, Hector.
Órale. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a great conversation. Cristela Alonzo, gracias, compañera, for bringing your wisdom, your comedy, your joy with us. I mean, that's actually my biggest takeaway from our conversation is the power of laughter and joy in these times. Because the folks out there, all the attacks on working class communities, right, on immigrants, they want us to feel hopeless. But when we get together and we giggle and we laugh and build community, that is the antidote. That is how we fight back, right? That is one of the ways we fight back. So thank you so much, Cristela, for bringing that to us. My name is Hector Flores. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of our new season on the Freedom to Thrive podcast, Resistance, Justice, Resilience. If you want to know more about NILC and their amazing work, you can find them at nilc.org. That's NILC.org. And make sure to subscribe to this podcast, the Freedom to Thrive podcast. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms.